let's quickly set this up because this is a very interesting topic that I think we should discuss, and maybe people in the chat too have thoughts on this. Like, so we're talking about the format. You know, we all love reading, you know, comics physically. I personally enjoy trade paperbacks the most. There's places like Marvel Unlimited, and there used to be Comixology and digital stuff where a lot of people do reading. And then there's the piracy sites. Like, I shouldn't say, you know, what they are, but they're out there. You know, you can find any comic book you want. And there is massive readership on those websites. And Carl, I think you know some of the numbers, and if you're willing to talk about this stuff, but this is clearly a big thing. And I find it really interesting because, like, piracy in movies is a huge deal. Like, no movie company would be happy if you downloaded Dune 2 tonight and watched it at home. But like, you could download Ultimate Spider-Man, you know, from this free reading comic book website, and Marvel doesn't care. Like, so that's kind of the landscape. Carl, what were you kind of getting at with that whole thing?
Yeah, what I'm getting at is I'm a big data guy, and at the end of the day, I need to follow the eyeballs, right? I think as 24/7, we're thinking about comics 24/7, right? And when you look at things and they're not working, you want to problem solve and like deliver a experience that people love and enjoy. I go to pirate sites because it's convenient. I'm about to board a plane. I could download it. And why I go to pirate sites instead of, you know, anywhere else, because some of these apps are just clunky. And the pirate site search, boom, it comes right up, download right away, and it's a fast PDF, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
you're saying that the Marvel app is not something that works well, and I agree with you, sir.
Yes. Now, eyeballs. You would think these sites would get taken down right away. Like, I used to be in, you know, actually Mickey and I both used to be in the music industry. You know, pirating was a big problem, but the more they fought it, the more it pushed back and more it proliferated.
Right.
But once Spotify figured things out, included all the labels in it, you know, things really turn around. Now there's actually a music industry again, and people are excited about music once again. So the reason I think I say that is because with comics, they've allowed it to proliferate. And if you look at like a webtoons, for example, a lot of folks says, oh, like, I'll reference ComicsPro. I think one of the attendees who I think had a channel that kind of poo-pooed on you guys at Spiral House, he actually went to ComicsPro and he poo-pooed on ComicsPro. And he basically said, he sat at the table and the folks at ComicsPro said, basically the whole next generation only reads anime and manga. And we're going to give up. And so in a way, it really turned them off. But if you were to look at the numbers, comics aren't dead. Webtoons does around 70 million unique views a month. The pirate site, that's the number one most prominent one, does around 25 million unique views a month. And they have day-and-day release with regular week-to-week comic book days. And that tells me that there's enough readers out there. And
yeah,
that's just one of them. But imagine the 4 or 5 that you actually see when you search for a free comic. I think we're competitive with webtoons, but we're just not capturing the value. And
yeah,
because we're not capturing the value, the companies cannot further invest in the quality of the content. And so who suffers? That is the creators themselves, because now they're not able to get pay raises. They're not able to grow. And then we suffer because they're not able to create great works. Obviously, you have like the outliers, like the DWJs of the world, who loves what he does and works super fast. He could produce great work, right? But for the most part, it's really hard for creators to deliver great work under the current circumstances. And so, you know, in a way, I do, as much as I do participate in kind of seeing how the pirated stuff works, I'm also studying them really closely as a business model.
So it's interesting because, so you said, so some of those sites get 25 million views
unique a month.
So and you told me offline. I don't know if you want to say it online here, but like you told me the revenue that.
Yeah, I'll just say it. I mean, low quality ads, not safe for work ads. I went to an expert who's big on kind of search engine optimization / ad revenue. He estimates that to generate around 8 to 10 million a year as a site, as a pirate.
So that's pretty crazy. So it's like, so they're getting all this traffic, they're getting all these views, and then your experience in talking to a publisher at one of the big two at ComicsPro was they don't care. Like, what was their feeling on this?
I didn't talk to the current publisher. I talked to a publisher that was a former publisher, and he actually said the corporate mandate was just to let it be, because it actually helps with proliferating their content and generating popularity. And I think it makes sense from, I mean, I'm not even gonna poo-poo on them, because to be honest, like, let's say, let's put on our, like, Mickey and I also work in film and TV. So, like, let's put on that hat, right? As an executive, hey, I'm getting like 25 million views by just pumping this stuff out, and it promotes my movie that's about to come out, that's gonna generate $1 billion. Great marketing tool, right? And so I get it. I see why they would think that way, because to them, at the R&D level, like, comic industry, a lot of the pay rates have not changed for years, and even gotten less because they're outsourcing to overseas. So, why wouldn't they just see that as like a really cheap R&D / marketing cost? So I get it, but it also shows the, why I think we're struggling a little bit as an industry, because the priority has now shifted to selling movies and selling TV shows versus really trying to figure out this business of publishing in a productive way. But don't get me wrong, they still make a lot of money. I think,
Right.
It's definitely showing a consumer over a collector all day. Just like, okay, numbers, free publicity, but there's no longevity there.
Yeah. And it's just an interesting thing, because so I can understand the idea behind it. Like, yeah, let's just get it out there in a way, or let people do it. But, like, does it really translate to, them getting more people on board and reading? Like, I keep going back to what you were talking about with, like, when music went through this, and like Napster was like the thing. And I think, who was the guy who made Napster? Sean Parker, right?
Sean Parker, yeah.
Like, I think he said something that has always stuck with me. He was like, music is one of those things, because of the way that, like, radio was created, that always felt like it should be free, because it just kind of exists, like, in the ether. Like, you go to a restaurant, you just hear it. You turn on the radio, you just hear it. So paying for music felt bad, but clearly people have to get paid for their music. So it was just like the model of, like, selling a CD at that time was just really breaking down. And so it became like it's more of a lifestyle subscription type of thing. And that's really where, like, Napster and Spotify and all that stuff, and Apple Music, I guess, or iTunes Music, took off. And I just think there's got to be something similar there with comics, where people like them, they want to have the lifestyle, they want to read them in theory, but is it just too expensive and too slow to follow single issues? Is that, like, the problem? It kind of feels like, I don't know if comics need to come out more like movies, where it's like, hey, here's the 12-issue trade. Like, we've been working on this for 3 years, and then we just dropped the 12-issue trade, as opposed to the single issue. I don't know. Like, was there any discussion of that, Carl? Like, what the Spotify solution to comics would be, or have you ever unearthed any answers in that space?
I think about it a lot, and then within the team we talk about it a lot, but I didn't see much of the digital strategy discussed at ComicsPro at all. The sense is there is a really refined distribution infrastructure already set up on a global basis. One thing that's really good, though, was typically, or before the pandemic, Diamond Distribution was the monopoly for distributing comics. And now there's Lunar and there's Penguin Random House. So I saw some competition there as far as distribution goes. And because now there's multiple distributors, ComicsPro actually worked on this project called Comet, which is basically metadata for comic books. So that going forward, they're going to be able to track the sales, sell-through for comics, I think, which is super healthy. And in a way, I was kind of surprised that it never existed. So in a way, we've kind of been working like the Nielsen ratings, where they just like estimate, they'll like survey comic book shops, kind of like how they used to survey I guess TV channels. and see how many people tune in, and then they'll just do an estimate. And I think that's how comics have been managed. But I think with better data, it's going to really help the industry move forward. So I think coming out of ComicsPro, I was pretty optimistic, seeing that by the end of this year, this new metadata will be available for comics to use as the platform.
Do you think that would encourage them to stay longer with series, or would that encourage them to cancel series even faster?
Oh, here we go. Here's another topic, ComicsPro. So let me kind of paint a picture of the demographics first. So we touched on this a little bit last week, but there was 3 demographics. So last year, ComicsPro said that it was one of the worst years for comic retailers, and they acknowledged it right off the bat. And I think it's coming off the highs of the pandemic. But within the demographics, I think it really impacted who showed up this year. I think one was basically a lot of folks described as the old guard, kind of older males that ran these comic shops for years, right? They've kind of probably had like their heydays in the 90s, did really well, and that has just been comfortable. And then there was a transitional group of retailers, which is the younger, 30 to 40 something that's been working in that shop for 20 years. And now it's taking over on behalf of the old guard. And then there's a handful of young upstarts that are, eBay shops first, and they're now coming in to start a shop. So they're trying to learn what it's like to run a retail shop. And, what was interesting was a lot of the focus was, really about, how to create longevity with the relationship with their customers. And when I spoke to the kind of second and third category, they were a lot more data conscious. In fact, they actually used a lot of the software that was provided. I think one of them is called like Managed Comics, and the other one is Comics Hub. And basically what they told me was, and this is from just a few of the shops I spoke to, 80% of their customers are subscription based. So like they're willing to subscribe, but the problem is they end up having to sell their customers again every time the book will restart. So there is a bit of a disconnect between the publishing strategy and the current buying habits of the customers. So
right.
Where, you can't really subscribe. Yeah.
I'll put a double point on that. And then I'm curious, Sarah, what you think about this. Like, so publishers, it's very clear to them, and everyone knows the pain points in the chat about this, that rebooting with a new creative team and a new #1 issue is the easiest way for them to get a boost in sales. So, all right, we're going to go, the Black Panther storyline will go 6 issues, and then we're going to reboot it to #1 with a new creative team, or Spider-Man, same thing, or, Doctor Strange, same thing. And that benefits the publisher. But what you just said from retailers is that the lifeblood for them is to have people with pull lists. And as soon as you reboot a series, what happens is a lot of people end their pull lists because they're like, well, I was invested in this one. And now you, the retailer, have to resell somebody on like, oh, but this new Black Panther #1 is going to be even better, so you should, start your pull list with this. So it's like these opposite interests between the publisher and the retailer of like what they want out of their customers. Retailer wants long running things where it's just kind of autopilot, where people are just invested, and then publishers just want new #1s, new #1s, new #1s. So that's kind of the issue, right, Carl?
Yeah, and the reason they do it that way is because they want to bump up the sales. So what happens is that #1 always bumps the sales, and it just drops like a crater, and then they restart again after 6 issues, and that's their solution to producing bigger numbers.